Hey everybody, I hope you all are having a great weekend. It's Sunday here and I decided I'm finally going to get around to doing the deeper dive video on my entry rules. It's taken me a while to sort of figure this out. And you know, I did a lot of study, I did a lot of planning, did a lot of back testing, and things just weren't really fitting into place. And then all of a sudden, it's like I had an aha moment, like an epiphany. And I really have to thank some of the people that have been viewing my videos and giving me helpful comments, because all of a sudden, the pieces just fell into place, if that makes sense. And I'll tell you why. Because there's so many rules to the no-nonsense Forex system. And I thought that I had the rules figured out. And I think I did. For each rule, I understood each rule. But what I didn't understand is, how do they all fit together? And what is the precise order you have to look at these things? And it's like, when that light bulb went off, I thought, oh my gosh, that could really make a difference. So what I did is I put together a flowchart, if you will, on our entry and exit rules. So here's my flowchart. Now, I know there may be more than 3, but for my sake and for my system, I have narrowed down it down to 3 reasons for entry, 3 types of entries. First of all, you have your standard C1 signal. Okay. Second of all, you have a baseline cross signal. And thirdly, I'm using a continuation signal. Now, here's the thing that I wasn't getting before. I think what was happening before is if I had a signal from C1, I'd take it. If I had a signal from baseline and other things agreed, I'd take it. If I had a signal from my C2, I'd take it. So everything depends on your C1. You build everything else around that. And that's where I think I was missing the boat. So let's see how this works. For each one, you have to go through a whole set of things that you look for. For a standard C1 signal, the first thing that has to happen, obviously, is you have to get a new C1 signal. So whatever your first confirmation is, that triggers. Next, you're going to check to make sure that the baseline agrees, meaning that price is on the right side of your baseline, and that it is within 1 ATR of your baseline. You don't want to have gone too far. Fourth, you want to make sure that your secondary confirmation agrees. And finally, that you have enough volume to support the trade. Okay, whatever volume indicator you're using. Now, for this type of signal entry, we utilize the 1 candle rule, which means that if you get a signal and all of these things don't line up, you have 1 candle to wait and then to see if they fall into an agreement at that point. In other words, you look at this first candle, no, maybe you don't have enough volume, or maybe your C2 doesn't agree. So you can wait 1 candle to see if everything falls in line. And if it does, you can take the trade on that second candle. But that's the 1 candle rule. The next type of entry is a baseline cross signal. So in this case, we see that price crosses the baseline and it closes on the other side. Okay. Then we check to see how far it's gone. Is it within 1 ATR? Yes, good. Does our C1 agree? Now, it doesn't have to be a fresh signal in this case. It just has to agree. Okay, our C2 agrees. Do we have enough volume to support the trade? If all those things are good, we are good to go. For the baseline cross, we do not have a 1 candle rule, but we have a different rule called a bridge too far. And that's the 7 candle rule. So what this means is if we see that our C1 agrees, but it's triggered a few candles back, we want to make sure that it's less than 7 candles back, because if VP puts it, as he puts it, That's just too far, meaning that triggered too far ago that we're not going to take this baseline cross. Finally, we have continuation. So with a continuation trade, you would have had a prior entry signal. Okay, and then maybe that signal has stopped or you didn't get in it, whatever the case may be. So the biggest rule with a continuation trade is the baseline cannot cross and close on the other side. The price cannot cross on the other side of the baseline. So it is still on that same side as your trade. In this case, we get a nice, fresh, new C1 signal. C2 agrees. So if this is a continuation, mean a secondary signal, then we do not need volume and the 1 ATR rule does not apply. So if all of those things are in alignment, we can enter the trade. So these other rules, and the 1 candle rule doesn't apply either. So it's got to be all or nothing in this case. I know, it's a lot, right? And I have to actually keep flipping back and forth with these rules. Let's see what it looks like with actual trades. All right, so here is our chart. What I like to do is I like to have my data window open over here. I have found that close enough is not good enough. So we're going to follow these rules to the T, and we're going to see how we do. So if we start here, what we're looking for is an indication of a new C1 change. So this is a change for me. Let's bring this in a little bit here. All right, so we're coming along. Here we are. Here we have a new signal. Okay, so we have a new signal here. What are our rules again? Okay, let's go back there a second. New signal, baseline has to agree, within 1 ATR, C2 agrees, and we have enough volume. Well, let's check it out. Here's our new signal. Baseline agrees, it's below the baseline, but look at this. If you notice our ATR signal over here, it is already more than 1 ATR past the baseline. Even though everything else is in alignment, our C2 agrees, our volume is good, we cannot take this trade. So let's move along. Here we go. We're only looking at this one right now. Here we have a fresh C1 signal. Okay. So the next one is it on the right side of the baseline? Yes, it is. Is it within 1 ATR? No, it is not. We have red numbers over there. So even though everything else is in alignment and we've got really good volume, we cannot take this trade. So let's move on along. Okay, so we have no baseline cross and nothing until we get here. Here we have a change in our C1. However, if you notice, it is a downward signal, but our price is on the wrong side of the baseline and our super trend, our C2, is not in agreement. So we can't take that. So here we go. Now we have a fresh signal. This is a new signal here on our C1, okay, and we see that it is on the right side of the baseline. It is within 1 ATR, okay, and we go down and we don't have enough volume. However, I want to point out that this is actually an indication of a continuation trade rather than a fresh C1. So let's go look at our continuation trade rules. So we had a prior signal. Price never did cross the baseline. We get a new C1 signal. Our C2 agrees, and in this case, volume doesn't matter. So let's go back and look at it again. Okay, so here we had our first signal. Okay, price never crossed. Here we get our second signal. So in this case, this would qualify as a continuation trade, even though we don't have the volume. But because it's a continuation trade, we could buy and we would have been successful there. All right, let's keep moving along here. All right, next signal is right here. I'm sorry, let me get those out of the way. right here is our next signal. So this signal is a change in our C1. However, price is on the wrong side of the baseline. Our secondary indicator does not confer, so we're just ignoring this. Here's our next entry signal. Okay, so we get our C1. We're on the right side of the baseline. However, we are more than 1 ATR. So we are not able to take this trade. And this is not considered a continuation because see here where the price went and it closed over the baseline. So this has to be a whole new trade, which means that all of those other rules have to apply. So we move on. Here's our next signal. Okay, so our C1 has triggered. Our price is on the right side of the baseline, but our C2 does not agree. Even though we've got, really good volume, we can't take that trade. So we go along, and unfortunately we miss all of this downward movement because our secondary confirmation did not trigger until here. All right, so we come up on our next signal. However, as you can see, this one we're going to ignore because our secondary signal is saying down. So we just ignore all of that until we get here to the next color change. So let's look at this one. So we have a new C1. Price is on the right side, the correct side of the baseline. Our C2 is an agreement and we have volume. So this would be a case where we would sell. And as you can see, we would be successful there. So moving right along, let's take a look and see what's next. So here we have a change. However, right there, it is below this secondary confirmation, so we're going to ignore that. Here we have another entry possibility, but this one does, let's see if this is a continuation. This is a continuation trade. As we can see, we have our C1 price has not crossed over that baseline at this point. Okay, so we don't have enough volume, but volume doesn't count. In this case, unfortunately, though, we would have stopped out. We would have stopped out because we would have closed it when our price went back over the baseline. And finally, we have another signal here, but as you can see, everything's in agreement except for that super trend. Our C2 is not, so we cannot take that. One more signal here. Again, everything looks good except the volume and the C2, so we cannot take that. How about this one? In this case, we have a fresh C1. We are on the correct side of the baseline. We have a C2 in agreement, and we've got lots of volume, so we would buy it there, and we would be successful. So there are a few examples of this system. And as you can see, you really have to work through each one and look for the particular combination of each to make sure it qualifies as an official trade. So I hope this was helpful. I think that this has been eye-opening for me personally, and I'm really going to try to be able to stick to these rules and hopefully have some better trades. I hope everybody's doing really well, and we'll catch you next week. Take care.